in the industry as Mr. Magazine. I'm the founder and director of the Magazine Innovation Center at the University of Mississippi. And it's a great pleasure and honor to be here. I mean, I'll probably be talking about something completely different than anybody else that have presented, because I truly believe that print is the new media. And we'll be talking about that. And please change the title of my presentation in your program, because I don't believe in predictions, because I believe there are only two people who can tell you the future, God and a fool. I know for sure I'm not God. So everything, if we're going to talk about the future, is going to come from that other person, and I hate to count myself as a fool. So let's talk about the 10 facts about media in 2016. There's hope. I wrote a manifesto for the Media Industry newsletter earlier this year, which was titled this year, There is Hope. And to me, I have been doing what I've been doing since I was 9 years old, a kid born out in Tripoli, Lebanon, before immigrating to the United States in, I think it was 1978. And I always believed that there's hope, that there's a big sign in my office that says there is hope, and in every language in the background has the word there is hope, next, of course, to my hero, Superman. And when I was a child in Lebanon, in Tripoli, I created my own magazine called Hope. And back then, we had no PageMaker, we had no Quark Express, we had no InDesign, we have no Mac Pluses, so I had to do it all by hand, from scratch. And that magazine was based on a quote from an Arab author, famous Egyptian guy, Ihsan Abdul Quddus, who said, "He who knows the word hope never knows the word impossible. من يعرف كلمة أمل لا يعرف كلمة مستحيل." So I took that and I went with it in everything I'm doing. It all started with Superman. I bought my first edition of Superman in the early 60s in Lebanon when it first came to the marketplace, and never looked back. I have never worked a day in my life. I'm doing exactly today, as a professor of journalism, as a consultant, as you name it, exactly like what I did when I was 10, 11 years old. The only difference now, people pay me for my hobby rather than I am paying them. But when I went back to Lebanon and dug through my files and picked up that first issue of Superman, I was stunned to see that I guess times were not moving as fast as they are doing today. The guy was still wearing his eyeglasses on the cover of the first issue. So probably like it was a little bit moving, a little bit slow. But you know, with Superman was not enough, so I figured we need something like that. We need a Magzilla. Times are changing. We really need to move what's happening in our industry, because really, with the help of Magzilla, I came up with the idea, like, folks, guess what? Digital is not killing analog. Analog is not killing digital. It's we, the people, who are thinking analog, digital, this or that. And in reality, everything that happened to us, especially in the United States, was from our own doing. I mean, and the deeper we dug the grave, the darker the picture was around us, because we could not see anymore. I mean, it's everything we are digging deep and deep and deep. Look at the analog watches and the digital watches. I mean, how many of you is wearing a digital watch that is worth anything, or is a collectible item, or is a Rolex? We pay thousands of dollars to buy an analog watch. Or, here's the best example. I am wearing my, Apple Watch, which my wife still feels that I'm crazy leaving my Rolex watch at home and wearing this cheap thing, which, by the way, I love. So both of them are, and because I love it mainly because it has an analog face on it. Everybody from all over the world that predicted and said, like, print is dead, they are swallowing their words. Nobody, you cannot find a single person anymore that will tell you print is dead today. Everybody is now using new phrases like, oh, print is like changing, print is doing this, print is doing that, but nobody is saying print is dead. And in fact, I tried to do a study in the United States looking at every magazine that said they are folding their print edition and going digital only or online only or whatever the phrase was they were using. In less than 16 months, that brand was completely gone. So without the core print entity, all those multi-platform, all these other things vanish. Because folks, if you cannot survive as a legacy media imprint that you have been there for 50 and 60 and 70 years, are you really kidding me that you can survive in the jungle called digital compared to the little tiny forest called print? So you have to start thinking, how are we going to survive in this digital age? And we live in a digital age. I mean, I'm talking to you and I have 4 digital devices on me. We started with the original platform, you know, the tablet, etched on stone, and it took us 4,000 plus years to actually come up with Tablet magazine that just was recently launched. After being a digital entity for 4 years, they decided that, how can I call myself a multimedia company without a print component? So they came up with the Tablet magazine as the print component. Fact number 3, what goes around eventually comes around. Same thing like, you know, tablet was launched on the digital device in the beginning, then found its way to print. And they are not alone. Look at how many new magazines have appeared in the last few years. I mean, you name it, these are actually all magazines that I bought last month from all over the world that are arriving like as first editions. And talking about first editions, in the last 30 years, I have accumulated 23,318 Volume 1, number 1 magazines from the United States alone. So anybody that will actually lie to you and tell you print is dead, tell them when was the last time you visited a newsstand. No matter how bad the newsstands are, we still are selling magazines on those newsstands. Print has a life cycle. When a magazine dies, it does not mean the industry is dead. Every time we hear some magazine died, everybody starts saying, I told you print is dead. You know how many times we would have said television is dead when every time a television program dies? Do you know that we have more magazines that have been published over 50 years, at least 4 times more magazines than we have television programs that have been alive for the last 50 years. So we have to start thinking that there is a big difference. There is a big difference between a movie failing, and nobody is saying theaters are closing, and a movie succeeding. We still have magazines that are doing very, very well, and magazines that are not doing well. So I decided, I'm sick and tired of doing all of this. I stepped down as chair of the journalism department, started the Magazine Innovation Center at the university in 2009, with the goal, with the tagline, amplifying the future of print in a digital age. And folks, I believe in digital. But finally, it took us in the United States almost 19 years to bury that old chap, Mr. Print is dead. And I've created the tombstone to actually put it on its grave that print is dead and nobody is talking about that anymore. Why? Because the birth rate of magazines is much higher than its death rate. In 2015, 2014, 2013, 2012, we have seen more magazines coming to marketplace than magazines that have died. And I am one of these, and just to tease the MPA, because when Mary Berner, when she was the CEO of the MPA, asked me, said, Samir, start using the term magazine media. I said, oh, I love the term magazine media. But anytime I'm talking about magazines, it's ink on paper. It's inherited in the definition of a magazine, that it has to be in ink on paper. Folks, we have all these new devices coming into the marketplace. Why can't we come up with a new creative way to call the so-called digital magazines, to give them a new name? How many of you, those of you who remember the day television was born, how many of you refer to television and for how long radio with pictures? We gave a new name to television and we called it television. So we have to start thinking, are these numbers for real? This is just the comparison between 2015 and 2014. In 2015, we had a total of 814 new magazines launched in the United States. 237 of them were published on a regular frequency, 4 more than in 2014. And as you will see when we finish with the masterclass, almost every major media company in the United States have launched a new magazine, print magazine, in the last year. Magazine must offer an experience. We cannot. Our biggest problem today, we are still publishing magazines or newspapers exactly as if it was 2007. The problem is not with the ink on the paper. The problem is, what am I creating? What am I doing with that ink on paper? I have to be an experience maker. I tell my students, you're no longer just going to be journalists. You're no longer going to be just content providers. The worst thing I hate in the industry is when you hear CEOs of our industry talking about we are in the business of providing content. Because my 18-year-old student can provide you content and can put 140 characters together and think of themselves as a publisher, as an editor, you name it. We are much more than content provider. Providing content is still very, very important aspect of our business. But if we stop there, we are going to fall miserably on our head. We have to become experience makers. We have to give you something in addition to the content providing. And that's why, we have to start thinking, what can I do that my product is not disposable? What can I do that I'll have that sense of collectibility? How can I create, curate, and make all the content credible? And you've heard almost all the speakers before me. That credibility is what differentiates us from everything else. That's what differentiates me from somebody who can put 140 characters together and consider themselves a publisher, or somebody that just create a blog. Do you know that in the United States, the average reader of a blog, the average total audience of a blog is 1.2 people? Imagine how much money you can make from starting your own blog with 1.2 readers. You're probably reading your own stuff and forcing your girlfriend, boyfriend, husband, mom to read just like the beginning of your article. So things are changing. That's why, that's why Hearst, and I agree with Pete, Hearst has been the most innovative company in the United States in terms of focusing on doing print right and venturing into digital. They did not ignore print. They continued coming up with ideas. Magazines need more editors and publishers. The worst thing that happened to our industry is creating those new titles: Chief Content Officer, Chief Revenue Officer, Chief Design Director, Chief. We ran out of Indians. Who's going to actually do the work? We have all these chiefs, and we have nobody actually doing the actual work. We need back that curation and the creation. Our job has become a combination of creation and curation. I've interviewed last year 127 magazine makers. Published them all on my blog. I don't edit my interviews, so whatever they tell me, it's there. And then what I do, the editing and the curation, is when I publish my book every year and just select the best of those interviews and put them here. And so these facts are not my making. This is not like some professor dreaming in his office and saying, this is what people are actually telling me is taking place. Print is the new media. I told you when in 2009, I started that Magazine Innovation Center, almost everybody in the country said Samir has lost it. Samir is swimming against the current. Everybody is telling us the future is digital and this and this. And Samir is starting this Magazine Innovation Center to amplify the future of print. Well, last month I was vindicated when the Columbia Journalism Review The new article they wrote, Print is the new media, and in it, it says, in 2009, Samir Husni predicted that print is going to continue as a major asset of our business. Folks, look at all the examples you've seen. What's the core? In all the examples you've seen, there was always a print entity. It's the cornerstone of everything that we are building today. This is my grandson. This is as if like he knew Mr. Magazine Jr. He's 8 years old. I'm working on him since none of my kids followed my line of work, so I'm working on my grandson. And his assignment in class was, when I am 100 years old, and he drew his own picture. He said, when I am 100 years old, all what I would do is sit around and read a book. I would do that because I would probably not be able to walk, or I might be dead. I mean, and he told me later, he said, like, when I asked him, said, what do you prefer? I mean, he loves his iPad to play all the games, and he's finishing the 5th volume of Harry Potter, a chapter book, in print. And I asked him, said, like, which do you prefer? And he looked at me and said, like, Grandpa, why are you asking me this? I mean, I love reading my book. I love playing on my iPad. And not for a moment he thinks that, oh, now I am moving from an analog device to a digital device. I mean, and it hit me that, you know, my father never asked me when television came to our house in 1960, which do you prefer, television or radio? I mean, I was still watching. I mean, they were there. Same thing. It's us who built that device. It's people our age who built that big divide that, oh, well, there's the digital immigrants, us, and there's the digital natives. They don't call themselves digital natives. And everybody wants to reach those millennials. But guess what? I teach the millennials. I see how they act. They don't spend their day on their iPhone reading our stuff. They spend their day on the iPhone text messaging each other, engaging in either games or doing stuff. And when they want to read something, guess what? They go up, pick up People magazine because they already read the news. So the problem is not with the print. The problem is with us focusing on, like in the United States, there's 72 million millennials. There's 72.3 million baby boomers, people over the age of 50. And all the media companies, all what we can think about, we want to reach the millennials. Why? They're poor, they don't have a job, they are broke in most times. Yet the 72 million equal number of baby boomers have jobs, have money, have more time to spend. Why? That's why, because we always go after the theory of what I call rejected simplicity. If it's too simple, if it's too obvious, then there must be something wrong with that. There's no way I'm going to do it because, you know, if I really don't have like those 20 million dots with the 40 million lines and stuff like that, people, they'll think like, wait, I'm an old-fashioned person. We are in the business to make money. Where are you going to make money more? Going after 72 million people who have jobs, who have the money, who have the expensible income, who can do whatever they want to do, or going after those millennials. Professor Naomi Barron wrote a book on books on screen, and she did a study in 5 different countries about millennials and whether they prefer to read ink on paper or pixels on a screen for their textbooks for university. She found out that if the price is equal, if the cost is not an issue, 87% of millennials in college rather use ink on paper books. 87. The only reason they buy the e-books, because until the Supreme Court changed the pricing and forced companies not to sell them at the $9.99 but at their real prices, because of the cost. So we have to understand, we have to start using common sense. One of the biggest compliments I've ever received is a presentation I gave in the Netherlands. And I charged a lot of money for it. And the CEO came to me and said at the end, says, Samir, that was just common sense what you told us. And I looked at him and I said, and you had to pay me for it. I mean, if we have to start paying for common sense, folks, there is something wrong with our picture. Because we have to start looking that we are today swimming in a sea of seas. I mean, we are surrounded by, I was just like counting how many people mentioned like content, mentioned curation, mentioned credibility. Did you notice that all of them are starting with letter C? There's no magic bullets. There's no formulas. Anybody that can stand in front of you and tell you, here's the formula for success, throw him out. I mean, our business is not based on formulas. The beauty of what we do is that creation and curation. There's no formulas for creation. There's no formulas for curation unless we go after that audience first and we say like, okay, Mr. Customer, Mr. Reader, viewer, user, listener, how can I make you reach to your pocket and pay me the price of my product?